Here we go. We've got Soren and Diego. Come on up, guys. Enjoy. Here we go.
So welcome back from lunch. Super happy to engage here with Diego. But before we do, I'm curious how many I met somebody from Istanbul, I met somebody from Greece, and I met somebody from Switzerland. And I'm like, is everybody from Europe? So maybe just raise your hand if you're from out of the country. Awesome. Raise your hand if you're from out of the state. Raise your hand if you're from California. Okay. And then keep it up if you're from the Bay Area. Wow, cool. Santa Cruz. All right, good to meet you. So I was talking backstage with Diego because we had this like slot. I always put a slot where I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. So we had this slot. I'm talking to Diego. I was like, let's have a conversation in the slot because it feels like important. And also Diego, as he mentioned before, just kind of come back from 6 weeks of silence and a 6-week meditation retreat. So we're going to talk about that. And we may have time for questions at the end. So if you have a question, we'll see if we can work those in. But Diego, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I'm curious, first and foremost, it's been 2 years, I think, since you got on a plane. Well, actually, you got on a plane to go to South America, I believe. But in terms of speaking at an event, this is the first time you've actually been at an event for quite some time. Is that true?
Yeah, it's the first time. And it feels fun. It's nice to be. It's nice to be around a bunch of people. But yeah, it's been a very quiet, family-oriented pandemic.
Cool. And I think people can relate.
Yeah.
And you also wrote a book in that time.
Yeah, I wrote a book. I finished one, wrote another one, and I got to meditate a bunch, which has been, I feel, extraordinarily grateful because the Vipassana tradition that I'm a part of, the Goenka tradition, we sort of paused everything right when the pandemic was starting, but pretty soon after, the NBA was like, we're going back on, we're creating bubbles. Yeah. I think maybe the second was the Goenka tradition. We were like, we're creating bubbles, we're going to go back to meditating. Wow. And it was awesome. We would like, all the students would take their tests, they would isolate, and then they would go into the course. And now with the changes that have happened with Omicron, it's sort of a similar situation. Students will test a few times before they get into the course. They test the day of, and they also test, do a rapid test like 3 days into the course to make sure that everyone's good. And then we just stay in these bubbles, during the 10-day courses or the 30-day or 45-day courses. But it's been really, I feel really fortunate that we figured out a way to get back into the meditation hall.
So 45 days of silence, meditating. Was there a freak out moment? Like, holy I do not want to do this one more moment. I need to check my crypto prices or my social media or like Netflix or something. Like,
no, I had a feeling. I left and crypto was at a high. I was like, I know when I get out, it's going to be really low.
We're both into crypto, so we just show that.
But no, there was no freak out moment during the 45. I think when I did my first 30-day course a few years ago, that was really hard. Being there for an extended period of time. I remember hitting like day 24 and being like, dang, like this is really long. Okay. And
there's just lots of nows.
Yeah. Nows. But there wasn't a now. There wasn't a continuous now because I kept reacting. If you're reacting, you're like either in, you want to be in the future or you want to be in the past. Yeah. If you're present, then you're equanimous.
Right.
But there were a lot of moments where there was no equanimity during those first few.
So what do you think changed with just more acceptance of?
Yeah, I think there were a number of changes. You just it's a slow, gradual process of building that quality of equanimity that's already ingrained in the mind. And I think when you just keep going back, when you keep trying again, you learn how equanimity is also a practice of acceptance. And it's just accepting. Okay, right now there's this sadness in my body, or there's this agitation, or there's any sort of heavy emotion. And as opposed to fueling that fire, you just sit with that fire and you watch it burn away. So getting accustomed to that rhythm of trying to meditate a little more efficiently as opposed to trying to do a bunch of things. Like when the Buddha talked about meditating as, do nothing, like just observe. Like he was not kidding around, like just observe. But as human beings, we're constantly trying to do something. We're like, how can I meditate better? How can I do this again? Or how can I like be even more peaceful? And it's like, no. Just like, follow the technique that you were taught, try again. And every time your mind wanders, you just patiently come back to the object of meditation.
And so that ability or that strength to do that, you think that was the difference between those two?
Yeah,
So
there was a difference, but I don't know what's going to happen the next 45 days.
Sure.
Like I might totally freak out in that one. Yeah.
I had a teacher who used to tell me, he's like, resistance is hell.
Yeah.
That it's not the thing, it's the relational resistance to the thing. And it sounds like that was very much a part of that world for you. I also want to talk to you about, we have a couple projects together.
Yeah.
Wisdom Ventures.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about why you're excited about that. We're also doing Wisdom 3, Crypto and Consciousness. So just tell me about the projects and tell me a little bit about how you decide to do projects. Or what do you decide to put your attention to and not attention to?
Yeah, I try to do very few things. I've spent the last sort of 6-7 years really focusing on just this Young Pueblo project. Like I really think about it as a project that I am starting, and at some point there's going to be an end, and I just I'll write the amount of books that I feel are actually like something that I actually need to say. I don't want to write 80 books. I want to write a few. Hopefully they're good. A few of them. But then when Soren and I were talking, he started telling me once about this idea. I think it was during like April of 2021, about trying to build a fund that is specifically pushing forward this idea of compassionate design, so that we can create and not create, but support and fund companies that are going to set up the next decade of platforms where people can have that connection that they want with others, but in a much healthier way. So it'll still be fun, you'll still get the services that you need, but there won't be that tinkering of the mind in the background where people are quietly trying to make you more addicted, quietly trying to influence the way that craving manifests in your mind, or what things that they're setting you up to crave more. And I got so excited about that possibility that we could actually make a healthier internet, and we have this setup in Wisdom Ventures where we want to support new mindfulness companies, we want to support human connection, we want to support well-being, but what we're really looking for are just, if you have a great idea and you want to create a new platform, it could be about any type of subject, but as long as you want to treat your users, the people that you're serving, compassionately. And I got so fired up about it. And it's almost to the point where it's embarrassing. Like we'll have meetings together and we'll keep, developing the company. And I'll turn and tell my wife, like, that was so much fun. And like, this does not feel like work, because it's so thrilling that we could potentially have a massive impact. I'm always thinking about impact. And I feel like with the writing that I've been able to do on Instagram, it's been so amazing trying to just like inspire people to keep doing their healing work. But I then realized that, imagine if we're able to help fund the next major social media platform that is the much better version of Instagram, the much healthier version of TikTok or something like that. And we're able to create something where could potentially affect hundreds of millions of people. And I was like, Soren, I'm in.
Good.
Like, let's figure this out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have a sense of what some of the components will be for that new social media, the next generation social media? Have you had some thoughts like it's going to probably have this ingredient and that ingredient, or this element?
I think most likely it'll come out of the Web3 space. I know it's like some people are super into Web3, the things sort of emerging around this like crypto environment. But there's a lot of amazing people with really strong values. And I think it'll most likely come out of that avenue. But it's funny because I love the opportunity that Instagram has given me. But at the same time, like myself and like most people, like we will use it, but not because we like it. We use it because there's no other option.
Because that's where people are.
Yeah, that's where people are. Yeah. But I think there is something really exciting about the fact that Web3 it's being designed in a way where it's sort of owned by those who built it and those who use it, as opposed to being owned by just huge multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yeah, cool. And what do you see? Do you have a sense of what your future is? It sounds like you only have so many books in you.
Yeah.
Is this
yeah.
the one you've finished 3?
I
Two
finished.
published,
I
3 are
finished
published.
3. I'm going to write 2 more,
And then
and I'll see if if I have something to say. I'm not
got
sure.
it. And then
Yeah.
do you have a sense of like what your kind of future horizon looks like, or are you just kind of here in the moment?
I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot of meditating involved. I feel like that's sort of the central aspect of my life. Going to retreats, serving retreats, just doing my best to like push forward on my own path towards total liberation and just supporting other people in their total liberation. But outside of that, I kind of take it by every few years. I feel like right now I'm in sort of that middle ground with the Young Pueblo project, and I'm still really enjoying what I'm doing. And I'm, obviously I'm like trying to constantly learn and reflect on what it is that I'm learning. But I feel like after a little while, I'll probably take a break from writing and just live life, keep helping with wisdom ventures. But I mean, my wife and I may have kids, so that's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah. So you use the word total liberation.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense? What's that experience? What's the best sense of what total liberation is?
I'm not totally liberated.
Right.
So I think it's the total eradication of craving. And you have these small moments where there is this utter release in the mind when you're just completely observing reality as it is, and you're feeling how much everything is changing at the mental level, at the physical level. You just feel the rapid fluctuations that create this conventional sense of I, but you feel the ultimate truth of it, that there's nothing really there. It's just rapid fluctuations. In those moments when you're really embracing that, the mind just starts releasing very rapidly. And my teacher at Senguenka, he was saying recently in the 45-day course, those are like tiny moments of cessation. Like, no, you didn't necessarily reach nirvana, but there's these tiny moments of cessation where there is no more suffering, and you're just observing
You're
things
just
as
with
they are.
what is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you look at your early 30s, mid 30s, I forget.
I'm 34.
34,
Yeah.
so right in there. You look at your generation, and your generation, mental health issues are huge.
Yeah.
Addiction is huge. There's a lot of unhappiness in that generation. What do you see is happening?
I see a lot of courage. I see people who are like smashing into the wall of suffering and being like, how can I break down this wall? Because being miserable, it's going out of style. Like, people aren't, they're literally like, people are tired of being miserable. They don't just want to wallow in it, and they also don't want to find easy remedies for it that aren't real remedies. They're just, trying to cover, so you aren't in contact with what's, really wrangling deep inside. But people are out there trying to find their own modalities, their own sort of healing methods. And this is what I often try to encourage people with the Young Pueblo work, is that there is something out there for you. It's just a matter of you having the courage to try different things and finding that which connects with your intuition, and then putting in the work. Because in that doesn't matter, whether, even if meditation is not necessarily your thing, or you feel like you have way too much trauma to even enter into the internal landscape, there are going to be other modalities that you can much more gently ease into what's happening inside of you, so that you could do that unbinding work.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I know you came here, you're born in Ecuador.
That's right.
Your family came here, and you were raised in a lot of poverty, or a decent amount of poverty.
A lot of poverty.
A lot of poverty.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. And you've kind of found your own living. Like, you kind of found a way to make a living. Was that an easy process? Was that a hard process? Is that experience of poverty like still inside you, of like, oh shit, I might lose everything? And
yeah, I think the experience of poverty, I was very fortunate with my mother and father. They were, incredibly moral people. For how little we had while we were growing up, they would still try to find ways to give. I remember when friends of ours, they arrived from Ecuador. They had recently immigrated, and my mom and dad sort of gathered all the clothes that we had that we weren't really using anymore, and just brought it to them in a trash bag and gave it to them. And I forgot that memory because I was really young, but my friend, who was a child, he vividly remembered that.
Wow.
And we were talking about it over a family party, and that's my parents. My parents and we struggled tremendously. So I think my good karma was the morality that my parents had, and the hard karma that we had was just like this grueling American experience where it was like we were trying to survive. Like my mom, she cleaned houses. My dad worked at a supermarket. We were struggling to just pay rent every month, and there was very little. So I think when I reflect back on what's my trauma, it was poverty, the American experience of poverty, for sure.
Right. And how do you kind of make sense of all that today? Do you feel like hard work and focus has kind of allowed you to kind of be a New York Times bestselling author, like have all these things, or do you feel like there's luck or karma, or how do you kind of make sense of that? And how much is money and making a living prioritized in your life, or how much not? Because there's a lot of people who are like, I would love to not do what I'm doing. I'd love to kind of make a living in a more aligned way, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like there are a lot of people that I grew up with. So I grew up in Boston. I was 4 years old when I moved from Guayaquil, Ecuador to Boston, Massachusetts with my family. And there were so many people that I grew up with that I went to elementary school with, middle school, high school, that were like just as smart as I was, but just because of the circumstances that we were all inside of, so many of them actually ended up, either going to jail, passing away early, or getting stuck in this sort of cycle of poverty. So I don't really think that that I'm special in any way. I actually think I'm very fortunate. Things sort of lined up for me in a way where I was able to pull out of that and help my family. But I think it's rather tragic that there isn't more opportunity for people who are in inner cities. And I mean, even when I went to high school, if you were Latinx, you had a 50% chance of graduating high school.
Wow.
And I couldn't. It was incredible. I remember going through high school and the rate at which people were disappearing. It was just incredible.
Wow.
So,
I noticed one of the joys that when we talk on the phone or connect, one of the joys, your biggest joys, is when you can you can help your family out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm grateful for any abundance that enters my life, because then I can just focus in on returning that to my parents and helping them, because they spent so many decades struggling, and they, similar to so many people in the late 90s, just like in early 2000s, built up all this debt, sort of fell into these different traps that were set up by our economic system. And so I think I'm just really fortunate that I can help them. And
Cool. I know, and sometimes we'll be doing something or we'll do an event or something. Diego's like, Soren, you must have some good karma. And maybe I do, I don't know. Did you feel that there's a karmic flow, so that the generosity allows that kind of like the karmic ball to flow a certain way? Or?
And it's hard to be able to tell what happened before, right? I have no idea what happened before I was born. But I do know how I'm acting right now. And I do know that when I am giving towards other people, when I treat them well, when I treat them with respect, I treat them with compassion, that wholesomeness, I can feel it adding to the peace of my mind. And I can, energetically, I think like attracts like. So that goodness will come back to you in some form or another. Yeah. And you don't know when. You plant a seed, but you don't know when it will ripen. Yeah. But I think living in a way where you're trying to give and support others without sort of losing yourself in that giving is really important, because at the same time, we're all householders. I know there's one person here that I know who used to be a monk, but most of us are not monks. So we have to be able to balance our giving and with taking care of our households.
Cool. And I know your partner Sarah also sat the 45 days in silence with you.
Yeah, she's an incredible meditator. Yeah.
So what is that like? And you talked afterwards, I assumed? You didn't get into an argument in 45 days. There was no argument in 45 days. No disagreement.
When I talked to Sarah, it's after the course. So for the 45-day course, we spend 43 days in total silence. The 43 days, you only speak to your teacher twice during that course, on day 6 and then day 26 6,
Wow.
where they check you to make sure that everything's going fine. They're
Only
like,
twice.
They're like, "You doing okay?" And we're like, "Yep." And they're like, "All right, keep going." And but then on
That's
day
an easy job, really. I mean,
yeah. No, but you'd be surprised. I mean, you go into the room and they're just giving you so much metta. They're giving you so much loving kindness. I remember I walked in on day 6 and the teacher is checking me as someone who's been meditating for 50 years and like hardcore 50 years. Like he's been, constantly doing long courses, has meditated with just the wisest people in the world. And I walked into the room and I was literally struck by how I could like feel the metta. I even like looked around me and was like, whoa. Like,
metta is loving kindness.
Loving kindness. Like the room was just so full of it. And I was just like awestruck, like this is incredible. And then he checks me and I'm like, yeah, I'm aware of the breath. But
so you and Sarah spoke for the first time.
And then, so we speak
Who's
the
here?
last
Sarah's
2
here.
days. And those 2 days, it's, they're sort of preparing you for the outside world again. So when you get out there, you're not too weird. And I think those are always like the most humbling moments where, Sarah and I are like sharing our experiences and I hear her experiences and I'm like, wow, that's a lot deeper than what I would. And, but it's amazing. I think being able to share that liberation journey with her and having that, we both entered into meditating as a healing journey and then it slowly evolved into a liberation journey where we started better understanding the teachings and started realizing that, oh, right, suffering. Like suffering is there and there's also the end of suffering. Yeah.
And so does that, in terms of like how you relate differently now, do you like sit and eat in silence or do you, how is it showing up? Or is it very subtle?
Yeah, the main way that it shows up is that we're, like I mentioned yesterday when we were talking with Jack and Cecily, that we are constantly sharing our emotional barometer. We're sort of just letting each other know, like, this is how I feel, but we're not saying like, oh, I'm angry. We're saying anger is passing through me, or there's a lot of anger coming up. And that slight distance where you are acknowledging what's there, but you're not being like, this is mine and this is who I am. You're just saying, this is moving through me. I think has been so profoundly helpful for the both of us because we just know it's another temporary thing. And then in that situation, not only does the person who feels heavy, you acknowledge it so that you're aware of it. You're not just trying to like hide from it, but then your partner is also now aware of it and they're like, oh, how can I support you?
Right. So last question, crypto.
Yeah.
What do you see this whole world going into? And how is crypto fascinating to you? What do you think it expresses, if you can? To express a decentralized network that's going to be like people-centered?
Yes, I'm hoping that's the direction. It's so in its nascent, right? It's just beginning. I mean, it's been around for like 10 years, but it's really just starting to burgeon. And I am hoping that it evolves into a situation where people have easier access to money and that money is cheaper. Like I remember I read one scenario that got me really excited when I was learning about one particular network, and they were describing how a lot of farmers in the African continent will sort of struggle to be able to buy the tools that they need to get better farming yields. And a lot of that struggle happens when they try to get a loan to buy better tools. The loans will be like 6%, right, interest, and then they just can't afford that. So now through these different crypto environments, you'll be able to get much cheaper loans that are like 1% loans or less than 1%. And if you do that, that'll like radically change like their lives and those economies.
Because you take out the middle.
You take out the middle person and you just, the money itself is literally cheaper. So having those decentralized finance networks, being able to have a different type of democracy, like a deeper democracy, having DAOs, having groups of people who are very invested in different projects or platforms or crypto economies, they can vote on them and decide, are these the changes that we want to see? And let's say the change itself that they thought was good, but they realized it wasn't good, they can backpedal and make another change. That's very different from our Web 2 experience where Facebook can just change things in any way they want. And if we don't like it, we can't do anything about it. But I'm pretty excited about the possibility. I think hopefully will end up helping a ton of people. And I know it's like a weird, strange area that there's a lot of like misinformation, but if you look into it, I think it's actually a very radical thing that's happening.
Awesome. Cool. So we're almost out of time. What would you like to leave everybody with today?
I think if you already meditate more.
And if you don't,
please find a technique. You know, there's something out there for you. And even if meditation is not your thing, like try to find a therapist, try to find some sort of avenue that can help you just keep delving inward, because truly, like, your healing does help heal the world. And your healing is going to improve your life by making you much more creative, much more energized, because what does a lot of healing do? It should be decreasing the intensity of your reactions, because like life is going to continue being sort of turbulent, ups and downs, but if you can decrease your reaction level and keep that, equanimity, so that you can assess, okay, this is not good, I don't like this, but now let me peacefully find a solution. That's incredibly life-changing, and that will keep flowing outward in the way that you design your businesses and the way that you show up in your community and your family, and how we move together to heal global problems.
Cool. Beautiful. Yeah. All right, Diego, Perez,
thank you so much.